public input on a survey that will be developed for their website, and the public can put additional comment there. So continue to follow up on their website and for additional meetings. And that's really all I had.
Thank you. Ms. Reed?
I have nothing tonight.
Yes, sir. I did receive a thank you today for the DPW for taking care of a tree of some sort. Thank you. Mr. Bookno?
As well.
I saved you for the last job because I know you have something.
Yeah, if we could just jump in, Madam Clerk.
Yes. Lafayette School?
Yeah, thank you. Everybody's familiar with our situation ongoing with Lafayette School and kind of, I won't rehash the history, everybody's familiar with it, but if we had a committee meeting recently. We do an ad hoc committee of 3 members of the council, myself, Rick Blood attends, and we spoke some about what we potentially could do with the buildings. I think we certainly need to have a plan for what we want to do with it moving into the future. And based on the goal of the committee, our thought was to move forward and apply for some grant funding in the hopes that we could obtain enough grant funding for both Morris County and the state of New Jersey to pay for the renovation and the historic renovation of Lafayette School. We do have, as council is aware, we have formal construction plans that were developed for this project a few years ago, I think really prior to COVID. And everything we've done with Lafayette School recently has been through grant money. We've got money from the county, we've got money from the states. We've had pretty good luck so far getting funding, even to get the plans, the construction plans in order, to get the historic designation. So we've had pretty good luck, but we're certainly at a crossroads where we should either probably decide to move forward with the building or decide if there's other roads to take. I think the committee's opinion was we wanted to move forward and try to restore the building. That being said, I've put together a memo for council, some updated cost estimates for doing the total restoration work, which have been updated just within the last month by our architect, Margaret Hickey. Her cost estimate for the total renovation of the building, which includes our prevailing wage, because it would be a township project, $1,135,938. We're thinking of breaking into multiple phases. The exterior is actually a smaller cost. It's only $354,000. That would be the exterior work. And then the thought would be to do that work first, and then potentially do the exterior work in 1 or 2 phases, depending on the funding sources. Initially, when I discussed this with the committee and some of the members of council, we were looking at applying for a state of New Jersey grant first. Their grant application, I apologize, a Morris County grant application first. Their application's due at the end of this month, and not long after that, in April, is the state grant application. Because of some of the Morris County restrictions, I think a better plan would be to apply to the state of New Jersey first, which would be in April. We would apply for 50% of the funding. And if we were lucky enough to get that funding, we would then have that funding in place where we would go back to Morris County for the remaining funding, which would be this time next year. So that would be, again, getting funding. The goal would be to get funding to totally fund this project without any township dollars going to the project, do the exterior, and then in the future, come back and do the interior, again, in 1 or 2 future phases, depending on what the funding sources would recommend for us. So that's the plan. It really brings the building back on the exterior and the first floor of the interior back to historical significance, and accurately portrays it historically how the building was whenever it was originally constructed. I think Lafayette School is one of two two-room schoolhouses that are left in the state of New Jersey. The construction, it's a pretty unique building. We're almost done how it's built, so it's a project that I think will be looked on very favorably by both the state and the county.
What's the likelihood of getting 100% funding?
I think it's very good. I think if we get the state funding, and the state, when we did this project initially, the state was, I even talked about, the state loved this project. They really did, because they realized how unique the building was. If it wasn't that unique, maybe that had interest, but they realized how unique it was in the state, what an asset it was to not only the township, but it's to the entire state to restore it. So I think we'll be very, very successful with the state, and I think once we get the state funding in place, the 50%, I think Morris County will also look very favorably exterior. I think we'll have luck on the interior too, but, you know, if we could do the exterior, we all know we've had issues there with the building, with the roof, with the windows, you know, other things that make the building not weather tight. My thought is at least if we can get the exterior done, it'll look historically accurate, it'll be cleaned up, it'll be weather tight, we'll move forward, hopefully get restoration dollars for the inside.
Mr. Hall?
Yeah, Mayor, you actually asked the exact question I was gonna have. Normally it would be the mayor's point. I heard you said 100% grant funding, then I heard you say 50% grant funding. What can we, is it 50% matching from us in order to get this accomplished?
Yeah, we've had really good luck in the past, and I wanna thank Amy Curry, because Amy, everybody probably knows Amy that's here, she's on our open space committee, and she lives in Roxbury Township, works for, Morris County Historic Trust. And she has provided the framework for how to do this, and we get money from the state of New Jersey and the county, and they really match each other. So instead of providing a local match, those granting organizations just want a match. So if we're able to get funding from one of the organizations and then funding from the other, they're in essence matching each other, meets the program requirements for both the state and the county, and it doesn't require us to provide local money. And we've done that so far. The construction documents, I think, cost us around $60,000 to do. That funding was provided 100% from the county and the state of New Jersey. And they know that. They know where the funding is coming from. It's nothing inappropriate. They just want a match coming from somewhere. They don't care where it's coming from. Morris County, at a minimum, requires 20%. They'll fund up to 80%. But if they're funding less, they like that too, because they can spread their money around. So we would go in, if we get state funding at 50%, we would only be asking Morris County for 50% rather than 80%.
Yeah, I was on the committee, and I'm not speaking for the committee, but just to give you a sense of what we were thinking is, nobody really likes where we are with this in the first place. I mean, we're stuck with the building, and we thought we had a buyer, and then they pulled out. So, honestly, our choices are to tear the building down or to do this, okay? And I don't think anybody in the committee was interested in tearing the building down. So, the good news is that we wouldn't move forward unless we met all of those, checked all the boxes that John just talked about. We have to get you to apply for the grants. Once we get the grants, then we would move forward with that, with the exterior work, so the interior doesn't fall in on itself, which is what's gonna happen. If the funding dries up, we're no worse off than we were before, which means tearing it down isn't off the table either, right? We may still have to face that decision down the road. But for the time being anyway, without costing the taxpayers any money, maybe we could shore it up and get on the road to restoring it. If we do that, if we ever get to the place where we restore that building, then we may actually solve the other problem, which somebody might want to use it. And so that's sort of where we landed.
Well, I've been dealing with this building for 20-some years, so, I don't think anybody ever wanted to tear it down. It just was on the table because of funding.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm hearing of possible 100% funding, and that changed the game for it. So if this is feasible and doable, it's fine, but if it falls short, then we gotta make some very big decisions, because we don't have to.
100%. That's 100%. I mean, our thought is to move this forward with 100% funding. If we can't do that, it makes a decision a lot more complicated, because then we're trying to determine whether or not we believe we should fund it in some percentage. And I'm very confident in this. I'm confident in the state, and if the state funds it, I believe the county will. I really do. They're interested in the project. If they weren't interested in this project, they would have probably funded our initial phases when we did the work, and we got on it. They funded to get it on the historic registry, and they funded the construction documents. I think both of those organizations, who are much more knowledgeable about history in general and preservation in the state and in the county, realize the uniqueness of the building.
Yes, sir.
Just one frustration being on that committee is, yes, we've already done the construction documents, we got 100% funding for that. It's a shame that we can't somehow get into a system where, when they accept doing the construction documents, that we get acceptance for the whole project and a timeline, even if it was a 5 or 6 year time. My frustration is, we go through all this for the construction doc, and then it's like, we start again, we're back in the mix with everybody else to try to do it well.
But the funding from the state can be pulled at any given point in time, so it's a yearly fund, so they can't give you that kind of guarantee.
The nice thing about the state grant is they actually ask about future phases. They're interested in, that's no guarantee they'll fund it.
Right.
But at least they have interest in, what are we thinking? 1 phase, 2 phase, 3 phases, what's it gonna take to totally restore this building? So they at least are looking at that, no guarantees, but at least they have an interest in it, and we could certainly tell them, because we have a plan and we have the numbers, the cost estimates. that are-
That's why
that are
I'm
updated.
gonna go state first instead of the county, because the county seems more agreeable once we have that.
If we get the state funding in place, Morris County's funding certainly gonna make us much more lucrative to them to fund it.
Any other comments?
I'm excited about this.
Move forward.
I'll bring it forward, it'll just be a resolution at a future meeting for the, filing of the application with the state. That's due in April. Mayor, if I could just jump in for one other item, if council wants to discuss it, it's not on the agenda, but at our last budget meeting,
I was gonna bring it up.
we only have a few items, and I think we all kind of said maybe we'll finalize it tonight. I did, send council an updated budget memo, it's very short because we didn't have a lot of outstanding items, so I don't know if council wants to discuss that at all tonight.
So, what was the fund balance, what additional came out of the fund balance, and what more additional can we get out to bring this to zero?
So we ended up, I'd have to look at my last memo, I think we brought out just a little more money, brought another $100,000 out of the fund balance in our last meeting is what we did, and that's what, that was primarily to fund the addition we needed for the fire engine that we approved. So I'm gonna say that as of the last meeting, I'll just get that number for you so I have it exactly. We have $3 million out even is how much being proposed for fund balance. It was initially $2,865,000. So we took an additional $135,000, and of course that reduced our tax rate. We've made some additional changes. Those are what I provided you in the last memo, and by doing that, we've reduced it even further. The tax rate is projected at 0.57%. The average homeowner, it's $11 a year. To bring it to zero, I do have numbers, but I always have different categories of numbers for the council to consider. To bring it down to zero, it would take $124,000 approximately in fund balance, and that would put us at zero.
Yeah.
So that's something the council can consider. Everybody on the council knows, we talked about it at our budget meeting, we're way over our fund balance, as much as I'm even more conservative than our policy, which is a 15% max. That's not the min, that's the max. We're still at around 23 or 24% fund balance, so we're well above our own policy, which is 15 is in the high end.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, put the extra 145 in with it. 145, 130.
It's 124, and again, I could be off by a few dollars, but I'm pretty close on that to get us to zero. And that's assuming we make the changes that we had put in the last memo to council, which again, there are only 2 or 3 changes in there that we included. One of them being, we did add the funding in for the Dell Avenue Playground at 100% funding. The council asked for that. That's coming out of open space. It is an offset. It doesn't impact the general fund taxation or the fund balance, but it does go in the capital budget, so we can do that project this year. So everybody's in agreement. We will move forward with it in that fashion.
We are.
Do we need a resolution?
No, I'm gonna look at Amy, if council's in agreement, we'll cancel our last 2 budget meetings. We have one scheduled for next week, and I believe it's April 4th.
Would be happy.
Amy, anything else you need on that, or just that's enough guidance to move forward?
Those are the public who haven't been here all year, every other week. We go through these books, line item by line item. Manager gives us a recommended budget. We go through it line item by line item. Some things we increase, some things we decrease. Some surprises pop up here and there. So it's a long, timely process. Every year, we're very happy about the process because it's a lot of work. We know we have a budget that we feel is responsible for everybody, and still putting ourselves in a much better position. Now that we're debt free, which took a long time, and gives us the ability to spend more in what's happening in Roxbury, like paving, fire trucks and things like that, without having to bond it and go into debt for it, which is gonna hurt future generations and those other future projects, so. Thank you, John, thanks staff for all the hard work. I know it's very time consuming on your end, more so than ours, so, we do appreciate the hard work.
Thank you. Well, I'll pass that along, and we know what to do. We'll move forward. That's everything I have tonight, Mayor.
Great job, thank you.
Great job, thanks.
Next item up is introduction of proposed ordinance, 03-23, an ordinance amending chapter 19, Department of Police by adding an additional captain's rank and repealing the police dispatcher position within the organizational structure of the Roxbury Police Department and the revised general ordinances of the Township of Roxbury.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it. Look at it, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
For the public's knowledge, we talked about it at the last meeting, this will give the ability to have an extra captain in the police department with some of the oversight that's been put in place by both state and federal governments. It requires more supervisory type positions. And we feel this will, there are several reasons why this will be offset with overtime schedules and things along those lines. We've left it open so we can reduce it again if anything changes, but this just gives us the ability to add that extra gap. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Albert.
Yes.
Councilman Carey.
Yes.
Councilman Crowley.
Yes.
Councilman DiFilippo.
Yes.
Councilman Hall.
Yes.
Councilman Patillo.
Yes.
Mayor Riley.
Yes. Takes us to the introduction and adoption, no hearing and adoption of ordinances on second reading, introduction and adoption of resolutions, please.
I'm going to move 2023-063 through 2023-072.
I'll second that. Motion and second, any discussion on any of these? Please send a thank you letter to the person that donated to the radio. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Albert.
Yes.
Councilman Carey.
Yes.
Councilman Crowley.
Yes.
Councilman DiFilippo.
Yes.
Councilman Hall.
Yes.
Councilman Patillo.
Yes.
Mayor Riley.
Yes. It takes us to public portion. Would anybody in the public wish to be heard on any issue, please raise your hand. Yes, sir. The young man in the front.
I'm Gus Adams Road. On the subject of this additional chief,
Captain.
sorry,
The additional captain.
captain, it's one thing I've been misreading. Captain is a little over than chief. I was thinking 2 chiefs would be a little rich for the thing.
So did the chief.
He doesn't like talking to us, he must need somebody else.
With 2 chiefs, I had in mind you're trying to build a kingdom out there, but it's a little bit different. I think I can understand a little better now without any further questions. Thanks a lot.
Just so you know, Bob, it doesn't increase the department size at all. Department size.
I don't recall anything in the budget for this extra money, though.
Well, it's offset by overtime, so we're not anticipating any additional, payroll.
Thank you.
The young lady in back there, what's your name again? Commissioner?
I don't think I heard this, but tomorrow night is also the Berkshire Valley Road Truck Circulation.
Can we get your name and address?
Oh, yes, Kathy DiFilippo, Deer Lane in Sarasota. But I just want to remind you that tomorrow night is the Berkshire Valley Road Truck Circulation Project. It's being done virtually at from 6:30 to 8, and I believe it's on your website, and it's certainly on the NJTPA site as well. To get the link to participate.
Yeah, I'm gonna be on that call.
I will say that, my experience at the NJTPA is that these meetings done virtually have had better attendance than we used to do in person. So, it would be great if we had participation.
I definitely am planning on attending that, so
Great.
hopefully I'll see you online.
That's all, maybe.
Mayor, just, if you will indulge me, please. I did accompany meeting of the NJTPA yesterday in Newark, where they thanked her for her 2 years of service as their chair and 8 years as a member of their board. And it was very interesting to hear about the enormous projects that they've funded through this is the Northern Jersey Transportation Authority. Money that's funneled through that group, which one of the things will be this railroad bridge project, comes through the NJTPA. So in any event, I couldn't have been prouder. The board spent some time going over her accomplishments, and so I just wanted to note that it was very nice afternoon for us. And then we went to Spanish Town. That was the highlight of my
Thank you, Kathy. Anybody else in the public wish to be heard on any issue? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, council members. Tonight, I just wanted to tell a little story. I found something as I was researching, landing and everything and the history of Roxbury. I found an article that I thought was very interesting in reference to another town that just kind of resembled some of what I think Roxbury kind of makes up with, the canal building and like the Lake Rogerine and the history of that. So I just thought it was interesting, and I just wanted to share this quick story. Cannabis leads a town's economic revitalization. Smiths Falls, Ontario, a hardworking Canadian town, is located in the heart of Rodeo Canal, halfway between Ottawa and Kingston, Ontario. Indigenous history shares that Iroquois farmers originally encountered explorer Jacques Cartier in this area. The roots of the town go back to a work camp for the reconstruction of the canal in the 1830s. Smiths Falls was best known as a chocolate capital of Canada due to a massive Hershey's chocolate plant which employed about 750 people. Other major employers included Frost and Wood Farm Equipment, Shorewood Packaging, Stanley Tools, and the Rodeo Regional Center, a residential institution for people with disabilities. Smiths Falls had been major employers. Smiths Falls had seen major employers shut down in the 1980s and 1990s, kind of similar to Bertrand's Island, but rallied with an emphasis on entrepreneurship. Things took a turn for the worse in 2007 when Hershey Chocolate announced it was closing the Smiths Falls plant. Shortly afterwards, Rodeo Regional Center also closed, which led to the departure of 800 residents and 1,500 local jobs. Shorewood Packaging and a number of other major employers also closed their doors or downsized. Within 18 months, about 40% of the local labor force had lost their jobs. Building infrastructure. The mayor and council of Smiths Falls rallied to respond to the dire situation and poured their efforts into finding ways to keep the town going. The municipality secured funding for infrastructure, a new arena, water treatment plant, high school, and refurbished hospital were constructed. More than $122 million has been invested in the town's infrastructure. The town aggressively promoted its opportunities, including proximity to universities and excellent transportation connections. Businesses came and went. Smiths Falls was determined to keep the infrastructure of the town going and trust that new employers would show up. After years of vacancy, the massive facility which had housed the Hershey plant was slated for demolition. In spring 2013, Tweed INC was checking out a potential location for a startup medical marijuana company in a nearby town, but found the site was surrounded by residential zoning and would have required a high-risk, lengthy public permitting process. Staff from the Ontario government's economic development team suggested the former Hershey plant. The Tweed INC team met with Dennis Staples, then mayor of Smiths Falls, and found a common interest. Staples' brother had died 11 years earlier of colon cancer, and medical marijuana had been one of the few sources of relief from the pain. He had an open mind towards a medical marijuana company setting up operations in Smiths Falls, and the negotiation began. The former Hershey plant was too large for the startup company, but Staples and his planning team went to work on dividing the plant. Tweed moved in and began with a few dozen employees and quickly needed more people and space. Growing marijuana isn't the only function of a marijuana company. A client call center, packaging rooms, a distribution center, and even a cannabis visitor center now fill the plant. The company had to expand into other plant nearby. Tweed, a division of Canopy Growth, now employs over 1,000 people in Smith Falls. Canopy Growth, Bruce Linton, was committed to the company being a good neighbor. Early in its development, the company committed to hiring and contracting local to supply every need from infrastructure to outhouses. As the federal government progressed to legalization of recreational cannabis, growth was continued. Now a core plant of Smith Falls, the company supports the town's arts and culture communities, as well as numerous other local charities. Smith Falls' economic development has been transformed by Canopy Growth, and this success has shone a light on the town's assets. La Boat, an international luxury houseboat company, recently set up shop in Smith Falls to take advantage of the beautiful Rodeo Canal as a destination for international travelers. Real estate development has sparked, and the value of the building permit issued by the town has leapt from $30 million in 2017 to $169 million in 2018. Lessons learned. Smith Falls Mayor Sean Pankow points to some of the important things that helped the town. Even when you have a strategy in place, when something this big that doesn't quite conform comes along, you go with it. Smith Falls didn't actively seek to recruit a cannabis company. Tweed knocked on the door and Smith Falls opened it wide. Be prepared and ready for investment. Have details about your properties and be organized for the right investor. The advantage Smith Falls had was a building with suitable zoning already in place, especially dealing with what could be a controversial business. Consider fitting the use to existing zoning. Have the foresight and courage to go where others may not. Be open-minded to possibilities and don't be quick to dismiss something that could be considered controversial. And that's it. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. And I'm gonna, on the record, I'm going to submit this along with 8 other support letters and a petition with 278 signatures.
Madam Clerk, please. Thank you. Anybody up to the public wish to be heard on any issue, please raise your hand.
And I apologize, another social impact.
Anybody else in the public wish to be heard on any issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public portion. I did skip communications. Did anybody have anything with communications? No? So that takes us to the executive session. Do we have an executive session for this evening?
We do, actually. Contract negotiations, local 11, and litigation, COA litigation.
Is there any issue?
A resolution of the Township Council of the Township of Roxbury in the County of Morris, New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Council with the public excluded, whereas it is deemed appropriate that the Township Council discuss the matters hereinafter mentioned without the presence of the public in accordance with the provisions of RS 10:4-12B, being Section B of the Open Public Meetings Act. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of Township of Roxbury that matters relating to contract negotiations, Local 11, and litigation, co-litigation shall be discussed by the Township Council without the presence of the public. If anticipated, these matters can be disclosed upon resolution.
You have a motion, please? All in favor? Just so the public knows, we're gonna go into private session. We will come back out. I'm not anticipating any action this evening, but we may take action this evening. So you're welcome to stay until we come back out.
Recording stopped.
What did you do next week?